Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Sunday chat today is hopefully, and from my point of view, not going to be as long as perhaps yesterday's questions and answers ended up being. Seemed to be reasonably popular. I think the people who actually asked the questions seem to have responded, you know, thanks for the answer and this, that and the other. Q's and A's are okay to do now and again. I don't want to make them a regular feature because looking back I've found that often questions are repeated by different people, but it's the same question, if you see what I mean. So the answer would be the same, so it can become a little repetitive. So a reasonable gap is required. That's that. Being the Sunday chat, thank you to everybody who supports the channel in whatever way you do, be it a Patreon, be it a member, be it leaving a comment, being a subscriber, or just doing a thumbs up. Or I've noticed some, I don't know what they're called, super chats, where a comment appears under a video with like a bright marker against it and an amount of money. Somebody's made a donation via, I think it's super chat. Surprised me when that happened. I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I'm still not quite sure where the money goes either. It must go into the YouTube pot. It must do. Because you can only have one account against YouTube. See, now I've got two channels, both are monetised. They will go into the same pot if the bonsai channel ever earns enough to actually get above the payout value. So although there's a little bit of money coming in on the bonsai channel, it has to reach a certain value before they will pay out, and then it'll have to do it again for the next one, so it'll probably be about 3 months time the way it's going at the moment. Bonsai channel's never going to be a big channel like I envisage my orchid channel is. It's never going to happen. The bonsai world is a much smaller, tighter world. And whereas on my orchid channel the majority of my viewers are in the States, on my bonsai channel the majority are in the UK, or at least in the EU. So it's a different type of audience as a majority, if you see what I mean. So that's that, thank yous. And I mean those are sincere thank yous. If it wasn't for the support, the channel wouldn't carry on. It is as simple as that. I wouldn't be able to do it and keep the orchid collection going and everything. So it's gratefully received, humbly received really. It's nice the way people can support something. And like many, not all, appreciate there are differences of opinion, but like many, I watched an awful lot of the Coronation on the TV yesterday. Now I'm not into the churchy stuff and all that, but I love church music, especially when that huge pipe organ gets going full blast. That sound and the reverberation in that environment with all of that stone is just a phenomenal sound. I bet you can't recreate that electronically. You can do most things nowadays, but yeah, so although I'm not really into all that sort of thing, I watched most of that simply because it was interrupted by music and some odd things. It just goes to show that this king doesn't want to do everything traditionally. He wants to do some things his own way. There was a gospel choir sang unaccompanied in Westminster Abbey. There was an opera singer singing in Welsh in Westminster Abbey. 2 firsts, yeah? The sword bearer, that's a special thingy covered in jewels. Probably wouldn't go in if you if you had to go, but a lady carried it. First time ever. There were lots of firsts going on there. So yeah. He will break with tradition. He won't just stick with the traditional ceremonies and stuff like that. And he, when he's like going somewhere for a function or something like that, there's usually people catch wind of it and they gather to sort of see him obviously prior to king, because he's only just become that. He won't have none of this high security and stuff like that. He stops them dead. No, I'm going over here to chat to people and shake hands. It's what he does. Not surrounded by 20 people all facing the other way, all with their hands in their jackets. Don't need all that. So I think he'll be a little different to what a lot of people expect. There were protests going on in London. Some say the police were heavy-handed. Basically, the right to protest must be maintained. I'm for that, don't get me wrong. But have you got the right to spoil lots of other people's enjoyment of a day that's only going to happen once in a lifetime? Have you got the right to do that? The answer is probably no, you haven't. So people had devices to enable them to chain themselves to various conspicuous places. Those were the people that were picked on by the police and singled out, not the ordinary people with the banners doing their peaceful thing in Trafalgar Square. Those weren't the ones picked on. So, you have a go at the police, they've still got a job to do. You have to bear in mind these protesters, they cost us, the country, quite a lot of money. A lot of police had to be diverted from doing their duties to looking after them, which they wouldn't have had to do if that hadn't taken place. So, swings and roundabouts. But, yes, I think on the whole the day went very well despite it pouring with rain all day. The crowds were still there. You wouldn't catch me standing out in the rain. No, I'd want a very big umbrella, welly boots. But I think anybody who went to go and take part, in whatever shape or form, if it was only just to stand on the sidelines and wave the flag, probably had a great day. And unlike many other ceremonies of that ilk in the past, how many people have got their own record of it because of the mobile phones and the way cameras and everything work nowadays? When you look back at images and film of the previous coronation, there ain't much around. And most of it was in black and white. I think all of it was in black and white probably. So quite different this time round. Those people will have their own treasured memories of their day at the coronation. Different thing altogether this time round. Anyway, so that was that. We've got the coronation concert tonight, which has got people that, musically speaking from my point of view, I have no interest in whatsoever. I do not want to see ageing boy bands prancing about reliving songs they did donkey's years ago when that was a big thing. It isn't a big thing anymore, But each to their own, and again the variety of music will be quite tremendous, I suspect. I think they're all there under request, summoned and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so that's that. Some people are having garden parties, the big lunch it's called, so, and I think members of the royal family are out and about lunchtime today, going and shaking hands again, joining in, saying hi, how you doing, and all that sort of stuff. So, when that's all done and dusted, life gets back to normal, and they put the lawn back together in Buckingham Palace. I can't believe they did that. That's a sort of almost a hallowed place, the back garden in Buckingham Palace. It's huge. It's acres and acres. It's got a lake in it. It's got its own species of moth that is not found anywhere else in the world. Never been found anywhere else. Yeah. So, but yeah, to have all those big heavy boots and stuff tramping all over the lawn, men will get out there and fix that very quickly, I'm sure. Now what do you want? Do you want to come out, or you're doing your usual, I'm just going to sit here at the door looking at it, and when you open it I'll take no notice? We'll have a go. You coming out? Oh, we are coming out, alright. Get on then. Actually, you can come and say hello. You haven't said hello to people for a long time. Come and say hello. There. You can all see Mojo. Getting an old fella now, aren't you? Hey? Come on then if you want to go out. I'm sure he'll turn around and come back in within about 2 minutes, if that. Sometimes he walks out, turns around and walks straight back up to the door. Little menace. Right, there's not much else going on at the moment. I've got a funeral to go to on Wednesday, which I can do without. It's an uncle, my mum's brother, but I don't really know him that well, and I haven't seen him since my mum's funeral, and prior to that I can't remember. So yes, I can. My mum's 90th. So, but yeah, my uncle's died. Bad set of circumstances from what I've told. It all happened over the Easter weekend. He rushed into hospital, so I'm told, and being a stubborn old goat decided he wanted to go home. They couldn't get a care package organised, they couldn't get stuff because it was Easter weekend, places were shut. So apparently it didn't go very well. I shall hear all about it on Wednesday. Unfortunately, that takes a day out. This is going to sound harsh. It takes a day out of me getting my talk ready, which is what, you know, could do without it really. But this sort of thing, you know, if you're invited, you've got to go, haven't you? So that's that. His other half is the last of that level of generation. All of my dad's brothers and sisters and their other halves passed away a long time ago. A long time ago. And on my mum's side, my mum's sister died quite a few years ago. My mum's gone, as you know, and now her only brother's gone. And all of their other halves have gone except for my uncle's other half. She is the last remaining of that level of generation. The next generation down is me and my brothers and sisters, etc. Yeah? So, and on my dad's side, that level, I don't know them. I don't know who they are. I know a couple of names, but I don't know where they are or anything about them. On my mum's side, my mum's sister's kids, 3, I know them. They've all got kids, you know. There's too much of it going on. Already too many people in the world. Yeah, so I've got that to go to. I mean, dressing up, wouldn't it? Never mind. That's the thing, they say as you get older, you stop being invited to weddings and get invited to funerals instead. There's one funeral you won't be invited to. We'll all get there one day. Right, species chat today. We're getting to the point where it's getting thin on the ground to have more than one. But what I'm going to do for this one is, obviously the Dendrobiums that I've got are in sets. They're actually formally split up into sections, which is how I'm basing my talk. I'm going through the sections with some examples of, you know, the more popular or more well-known orchids within that section, and, you know, temperature ranges, because the title of the talk is Dendrobiums, a seasonal guide. So for each section, I'm having a look at their, you know, normal habitat and what the seasons would be and what you need to do to sort of replicate that if you've got any of those. Now I've done 2, but I've done the easy 2. I've done Phalaenopsis types. There's only a couple. Do you know the Dendrobium sections are strange? There's about 20, depending on where you look. But there's 6 popular ones, the ones that have Dendrobiums that many people know. So that's the 6 I'm going to do. I can't do 20, can I? I've only got 40 minutes, for goodness sake. So I'm just going to stick to those 6. But the names of the Dendrobium sections, you'll have heard me talk about Latoria types, which is what I'm about to do now. You'll have heard of me talk about nobile types. That's not a section. That's just a type of Dendrobium that happens to have many, many, many hybrids. So, and is probably the one you'll come across most often. Yeah. but there is a Dendrobium section called Dendrobium. How daft can you get? Who thinks up this stuff? You couldn't make it up, could you? Anyway, so that's the way I'm formatting the talk. And the two easy ones, the Phalaenopsis type, because there aren't many species within that section at all. And I've done the spatula section, which is the antelope types. Again, it's not a huge section, and in those two sections, the care can be taken for the plants in the section, generally speaking. Out of the 6 I'm doing, that's the only 2. Once we get into the other 4 sections, it ain't going to work like that, because there are cool growers and warm growers, high light, low light, in the same section. So you can't use the section as a care guide. It doesn't work like that. You've got to go down to the species levels. And then there's the hybrids, where you do it like that. There's a way of sort of, you know, trying to work out how the care ought to be for that hybrid, which is to get back to whatever species went into it and average the care. So if you had a cool grower and a warm grower, intermediate's probably about right for a hybrid that contains those 2. Still a guess. One could be dominant, you know, and you could be keeping it too cool. So anyway, so what I thought I'd do is I'd split my Dendrobiums up like that. Now there's quite a few of my Dendrobiums, and not in a section that you'd have heard of. So they can be grouped together as others. We just call them others, section other. Well, that's not as daft as section Dendrobium, is it? Right, so I'll cut off now, and then I'll get the Latorias out that I've got. I've got more than I thought when I started looking round. And I've got one that I'm not sure is actually a Latoria, but it looks like it, so I'm going to include that anyway. I don't think it is, but I don't know what section it is if it isn't that. Now I'll leave it out just in case. I'll stick to the ones that I know are Latoria types, and we'll have a look. There's at least one on the mount, and pots. Some have been potted for a while, some are quite large, some aren't. And we'll just have a look at those and generally have a chat about them. There's a face at the door. You coming in? No? Just teasing? He's a nuisance sometimes. I'm sure they do it on purpose. They have this thing that when it's to do with humans, I'll ask to do something and then change my mind. Anyway, so we'll break off now. I'll get the plants out somewhere where we can see them on the bench or something, and then we'll have a look and a chat about Latoria type Dendrobiums. And yeah, that'll do for today. And yeah, we'll do that now then. Okay, before we get going with this, you're probably wondering why there was a mask over my lower section, shall we say, in the first part of the video. I didn't do my zip up. And although nothing was untoward, it still doesn't look very good. So I've masked it, you know, it's the only thing. I'm not refilming it, so you're gonna have to lump it. That's how it is. Hopefully it doesn't distract. Now I've mentioned it, it probably does. I bet loads of people didn't even, well, you can't notice because I put a mask over it. Right, now, Latoria types. First of all, you go back up there because you're not a Latoria type. I thought it was, but I had a quick check before I blurbed. Strangely enough, this large plant here is in the same category, same section as Dendrobium jenkinsii, which has pseudobulbs that big. Anyway, what's left are Latoria types. So we will have a look at these now. In the Dendrobium sections, there's always one that's chosen as what they call the type. It's the one that's allegedly represents the section, I think, something like that. And the one they've chosen for the Latoria section is this one, Spectabile. And quite honestly, that one is so odd in its shape, patterning, colouring. I can't see how that represents all of the Latoria types, but somebody thought that was a good idea. Now, one thing these do have in common is they are right up the warm end of intermediate, and some are classed as actual warm growers. Now, when you get into the warm grower section, the thing you have to appreciate is warmer winters. These do not like to get cold. However, as you know, my winters are relatively cold, although I had to bump it up halfway through the winter to stop any more losses. Nonetheless, they could do with being warmer than that. There are consequences of not having a warm enough winter. That is, they tend to slow down to a standstill, and in the main it will generally stop growing. I say in the main because there'll always be exceptions. There'll be some that are more cold tolerant than others, you know, within the group section. Anyway, this one's classed as warm to hot. So this one doesn't like the cold, and I think it's reasonably obvious that that's not a happy plant. Yeah, there is no sign of life at the base, no new growths. It has had a new growth that failed. The last growth that he put up successfully is this one, which is a cane larger than anything else on the plant. So that's good. And it's holding its leaves. And it's possible that it might bloom because that's the nubbin. Now, again, this is an oddity. Nearly all of the Latoria types that I know bloom out of the top of the cane, between the top two leaves. This one doesn't. It probably can, but I've had blooms on this, and well, I say blooms, I had 2 large buds and knocked one of them off before it opened, so I've had a bloom on this. That was a while ago now, I haven't had one since. So this might get going, that nubbin, and form a bloom, or it could be a spike with several, I don't know. They are quite large. So that's my not doing very well, and quite honestly I can safely say for obvious reasons. It's too cold. And it's also too cold for that in the summer months. So I don't think that's ever going to be a success for me. That's up in the low 30s in the summer months where it comes from. Well, I'm lucky to get 24, 25. That's quite a difference. 5 degrees centigrade in its growing season is quite a drop. So that's probably never going to do that well for me. I didn't actually buy that, I was given that. Right, coming over here, let's have a look at this one next. This is looking not a bad plant. It's holding its leaves in the main. This is a hybrid. This is Aussie's Sweetness crossed with Tapeniense. So it's not a primary cross, but it has got a good bit of species in it. This one does have a new growth. So this one is coming into growth. Is it just the one? Yeah, just the one. And this has never bloomed for me. It's also got some new roots growing. So this one is more cold tolerant because, as you can see from the look of the plant compared with that one, it's doing a lot better. So it must be more cold tolerant. It's doing better. It's got a good root system down in there. I think that's due a repot, I'm not sure. So that's that one, never bloomed. So I haven't got a clue what the blooms are going to look like. Because it's a hybrid that I could look up, crossed with a species, I doubt if that cross is registered. It might be. But if it's registered, that doesn't guarantee you can see a bloom. Right. So this one, Lynn gave me. And this is Dendrobium convolutum. Now, if this ever blooms, it will be stunning. But it hasn't yet. And since I was given it, it was freshly potted as a division. I believe it's done nothing. 0. So it's got no new growths. and there's no sign of blooming. So this is sulking, but it's not dying as such, or it would drop its leaves. So it's still alive, but I would suggest only just. It hasn't pushed any new roots out, and it has no new growths. It could be that this one is not cold tolerant and is therefore never going to do very well along with that one. Possible. Right, then over here we've got what is one of the popular crosses, which is Roy Tokunaga. There's a whole little set of these, and they all have a different name. So, I think, there's Dendrobium something Tokunaga. And this one seems okay as well. It's not dropping its leaves all over the place, and its latest new growth has pushed on quite nicely. It's not quite as large as some of the others, but at least it grew roots and has grown a new growth. So this one's not doing too bad. I had this one a long time ago and it was doing fine, and then it just keeled over. But that was in the old place. In the old place I had the heat in the growing season, which is what I'm lacking here. So when I can come across more cold tolerant Latoria types, that will get them through the winter. But without the heat in the growing season, they're still probably not going to do anywhere near as well as they should do. So the simple statement I'd have to make is I won't be getting any more Latoria types for this environment, because they're just never going to do brilliantly. They might survive, they might just about do okay, but then again they might be like this one and they're never going to do okay, and the reason's obvious. That is a warm to hot grower, so I can't deal with those, and I shouldn't have them. But it was got when I was in the other place, when I did have those summer temperatures. So the traits of these is they do tend to have a fatter base to the bulbs. This one typifies it a bit more than perhaps some of the others. They don't all look like that, but the healthier ones do tend to have a sort of a little bulge at the base. Number of leaves varies, but it averages 3, sometimes 4. I don't think I've seen 5, certainly on none of mine, and sometimes only 2 leaves. So they vary. On here, there's some with 1. That's where one's died. It didn't only grow 1. This one looks like it's a 3-leaf type with the health it's got. This is a 3-leaf type with the health it's got. Over here, difficult to say because there's 2s and 1s, but then I know that one's not doing very well. And over here we've got 2s and 3s. So the 3-leaved canes being the stronger, larger, more healthier ones. As far as size goes, there are some quite small ones, but there are also some that can get pretty large. You see a decent grown spectably, canes are twice that size and twice as fat, so they can get big. But I would say that as far as the ones that you're most likely to come across, that's probably a bit average. More that sort of size possibly. This one's actually a reasonable sized plant. They do tend to push out new growths in the spring, but if they're given the right temperatures throughout the year, they will grow continuously. So new growths can come out any time, literally any time. So you could have new growths starting in December or even November, and you think, what am I going to do with them? Well, they're probably only going to do that if you've got the right sort of temperatures. In other words, you've got warm winters and warm to hot summers. Now, to go with that heat, if you have got temperatures up near that higher end, if you can manage that, then you need to get the humidity up. These will not tolerate hot, dry air. They need the humidity. This one comes from rainforests and mangrove swamps. Emphasis on the word swamp. Yeah, so, that is an incredibly humid atmosphere there. It's what you might call the close atmosphere. People describe it as close, where it's almost oppressive. It's hot, and there's not much air movement. It's still hot and stuffy. And That'll do well there. I won't, but that might. The next trait is that under normal circumstances, they bloom from the apex. Now, a lot of them will form a sheath on every single growth and not necessarily bloom from any of them. Yeah? There's no sign of any buds in these. And, you know, I have got new growths on this. Now this one over here, this is what they look like when they're new. The cane starts to mature and it produces the sheath, and it's nice and green, and you sort of think, oh, the buds will come out of there. Well, on a good day they might, but I'm not getting Latoria blooms, and I firmly believe it's because I've lost my heat, so they're just never going to do as well. Consequently, as I said, I was given that. I wouldn't have bought it because I'd have looked it up and thought, warm to hot, we can't do that. So I'd have left that one. But as I've got it, I'll see if I can keep it going. And the others, this was a gift. So both of those were gifts. This one, the Roy Tokunaga, I got as a replacement because I really liked the previous one. I'll have done blooms, so you'll see. The bloom on this one, on Roy Tokunaga, always reminds me of a bird suddenly taking off, you know, when they hold their wings up high before they flap and get that lift, or perhaps a butterfly or something. But as Latorias go, it's a plain bloom, because some of them, like you saw with the Spectabile, are quite stunning to say the least. So we will leave it at that, and as the people in the flat over there have decided to shout at each other with the window open, and I can hear them inside my house with my windows and doors shut, so cheers for that, Gobby. I'll sort of sign off for today, I think. My washing machine is about to finish, so I've got to get me washing out and get that hung up indoors to dry off. I know I'm a scruffy blighter, but I do need clean clothes sometimes. Not often. But sometimes. Okay, thanks for dropping by. And as I said, I thought for a change, instead of doing a species, I'd do a type of Dendrobium, which is almost like doing, a genus. Give me words muddled up here. More coffee. As you can see, there isn't any, so we need another coffee. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.